restless sea. We are met to call from out the past stories strange and weird.
Marc Fellhauer.
Toll the bell, so all may know we are gathered again in the Weird Circle.
It's gone.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now, Albert?
Hey kids, it's your old pal ML Elric here in the Weird Square. Although we are a circle of friends, perhaps a triangle in Shawn, but there's four of us here today. Mr. Marc Fellhauer, Mr. Shawn Windsor.
You got the first shot off. I like that.
And,
by the way, that intro was
long.
Take over. Yeah.
That was it? You just wanted to say that intro was long?
Well, no.
We all just heard it.
It suits Mike.
Oh, okay.
You know, we heard from a lot of listeners who said last week, per capita, that was Shawn's best show.
Wait, what was the show they were upset I was grumpy? Was that the week before?
The Turd in a Punch Bowl reference.
Was that it? Yeah.
Yeah. That was no. I think you were. Well, I mean, you were grumpy. It doesn't really. We had 176 to try and pick from.
Wow, we've done that many.
We need to have a meter.
No wonder I'm grumpy. So last week was a great show, and there's a reason why, right?
It did very well. I don't know. It's because it was great. I mean,
no, it was great because I wasn't there.
It was about conspiracy theories.
You had to leave.
And we had the author of a book about conspiracy theories looking at the Seth Rich murder that people thought may have been committed by the Democrats to try and cover up a leak. And there were some theories that came out of that what happened to Shawn? Where's Shawn? Did they finally follow my advice and put him in a shallow hole somewhere?
Yeah, no, and your numbers spiked. In fact, I'm getting ready to leave here in a couple of minutes, so I'll help you out again.
Actually, I just got a text from Carlos that said, "Keep him talking. We're doing great." So I don't know if he's trying to drive the Carlos and Shawn numbers here.
Yeah.
Anyway, now that Shawn's done, we have Evelyn Aschenbrenner here, who is a former student of mine, outstanding journalist, great writer, great reporter, brought some justice to Detroit and avenged some wrongs that were committed by a diabolical individual. And we can get into that a little bit. But right now, she is helping to liberate Ukraine as one of the Americans, and we can't say how many because we don't want to aid the enemy, who are fighting to liberate a country that is now, is it 6-8 months that the Russians have been trying to steal more land?
More than six.
More than six. So, yeah. So, by the way, everybody who's mad about gas prices and inflation and all this other stuff, don't forget about Vladimir Putin, what he's doing over there. He's not helping anybody out with that stuff. And Evelyn's going to share her experiences here. And if that's not a varied enough resume, if we have time and with Shawn's permission, she's going to talk about what she does in her spare time as a drag king. Yes, there are drag kings. I expect that they'll soon be featured in political commercials here, since we've already got people going after the drag queens in our election. So Evelyn has got a lot to share with us, and we're going to get to that right after we thank the people who make this show possible. David Hall of Hall Financial and Luke Nowacki, who, if you look at the market today, not so scary, most days terrifying, and Luke is the guy. Let him handle that burden. So Luke can do all that for you.
Yeah, mortgage rates might be climbing, but you know what else is climbing? Those credit card rates. A lot of flexible rates are climbing. If you have over $5,000 in credit card debt and you own a home, you got to call Hall Financial to see how they can help you. Home equity is one of the most affordable resources you can use to pay off high interest credit card debts, student loans, or even if you want to just maybe fix up that house a little bit. You can get a free 5-minute mortgage review with Hall Financial. It's all it's going to take to see how much money you've gained in home equity and then what you can get out of it. They have over 5,000 5-star reviews. Hall Financial is Michigan's highest rated mortgage company. So give them a call, See if a cash-out refinance makes sense for you. 866-CALL-HALL, or click on the link on the website on ML Solar Detroit and let them know that we sent you there.
And when you're saving all that money, give some of it to Luke. He can parlay that into a nice, cozy retirement.
Yeah, a lot of people feel it's a good buying opportunity right now with the market. So if you're facing a big financial decision, maybe such as buying a new home or a new car or something, anything, you got to know how that decision is going to affect your current and future financial goals. So get a plan. Luke Nowacki's got a whole team at Pinnacle Wealth Strategies. They can help you plan for your financial goals, both today and in the future. So give them a call, 248-663-4748. And once again, you can find the link on the website of ML Solar Detroit.
And when you call Luke, he'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Royal Alliance Associates Inc. Member FINRA SIPC. Royal Alliance Associates Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Royal Alliance Associates Inc.
So Evelyn is joining us. She has seen her share of missile strikes and shelling, and that was before she left Detroit. So now she's...
There's one joke.
Was that Lila?
No.
I thought that was our...
She was laughing at your joke.
That was Drew's air raid siren, Lila, the...
Barking dog?
The early warning. She's one of the few women in the International Legion, and while she's been fighting since early March, it's been a crazy year, and she's back home to tell us a little bit about how things are going on in Poland and the Ukraine. Now, you live in Poland, but do you make...
I do live in Poland, yes.
Do you make forays, or do they call them sorties into Ukraine?
I mean, this is my second time in Ukraine. I was the longest time. I have visited Ukraine before, both Lviv and Kyiv, but this has definitely been, the last 6 months have been my longest stay in Ukraine.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about how you got involved in this. I mean, this is not like going for a hike and deciding, wow, I really like nature.
As I said, I've lived in Poland for about 8 years, and I had been to Ukraine before. I thought it was a beautiful country, loved the history of it. And when Putin invaded, he invaded on Punchki Day in Poland. And
he wasn't just going for a snack. He decided to stay.
And being in Poland with, I signed up to have Ukraine as a neighbor, not necessarily Russia. And to me, there's also a number of people from Ukraine who live in Poland, particularly the town that I live in. And to me, like, the threat felt very immediate. And after the invasion, I felt like I couldn't sit still, like I had to do something. And I talked myself out of crossing the border and trying to join the army because, I don't have prior military experience. I don't speak Ukrainian. I'm a woman. But when President Zelensky said that foreigners could come and join the army, I'm like, oh no, I'm going to Ukraine.
What was that process like? I mean, I think this was an invasion that people weren't really waiting for, and all of a sudden folks are having to defend their homeland. And I mean, did you go through basic training? Was there any sort of briefing, or did they say, here's what we need you to do, go do it, and if it doesn't work out, we'll send a note home to let your friends know that we really appreciate your efforts?
No, it's not that disorganized. I crossed the border from Poland into Ukraine on March 8th and joined the Legion on March 9th. At that time, we were stationed at the Yavoriv military base. The base location has since moved, but there was, before we were deployed forward to the front, there was some basic training, including zeroing weapons, basic infantry training, learning to work as a squad, as a platoon, Geneva Convention stuff, how to use radios effectively, all the kind of things I would go into.
Did you have any background or any kind of training whatsoever before you did this, or this was all something I have to do?
I feel like I had to. I really feel like I had to. I feel like in times of war, the people who usually sign up for the army are single men. And I had a friend who was, a Ukrainian friend who was stuck there because he was visiting his family when the invasion happened. And just made me so angry that it's like, just because he's a guy, he can't go home now. He's stuck in Ukraine because of the conscription, of the draft, and I really wanted to help in any way that I could.
But no past history of any kind of military?
Absolutely not.
Really?
I'm fairly far left. I never in a million years thought I would join a military. And if I tried to join it now, I probably wouldn't be allowed in. In the first few weeks, they were taking almost anyone. They started stepping up their screening process to make sure they're only taking people with military experience and combat experience, especially. I stayed because I'm not a combatant. I'm not at the front, but I've been doing a lot of paperwork and that sort of thing. I speak a little Polish, which is similar to Ukrainian. And also, I've been a teacher for 10 years. I can give me a long list of foreign names and say, how do you say these? And you find these people and keep track of them. And I can do that.
Wow. But still, I mean, the balls to go over there and just jump on. The cojones, I don't know what word the moxie.
The metaphorical balls.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Metaphorical balls are good. I feel like if I didn't, I would regret it I would just completely regret it. And it wasn't easy. I had to find someone to stay in my flat and to, watch my cat. Also, like seeing the reactions of my friends as I left was very difficult.
Did any friends go with you?
I did have a friend come with me close to the border, but his wife would have killed me.
But did you know anybody in the, what's it called, the International Legion?
International Legion.
No, not at the time I crossed.
And what about your job?
Yeah.
I mean, you found somebody for your flat and your cat, but what about, paying the bills? Do they pay you in this?
Actually, no. They do. The Legion does pay soldiers actually quite a good salary if you're at the front for Ukrainians. But what was the question again? Sorry.
I mean, what about your job?
Oh, right. Originally, I took a unpaid leave of absence from my job for 2 months. Well, I sort of took time to figure out if I wanted to stay in Ukraine or if I wanted to return to Poland. And I ultimately decided to obviously stay in Ukraine to be part of the Legion.
So you are in Ukrainian territory. You live in a place that is now a war zone.
Yes, for the last 2 months, I've been in the Kharkiv area.
And what have you seen over there?
It's more what I've heard. I've heard a fair amount of artillery, missile strikes, a fair amount of things exploding. I think the hardest thing is simply to see Kharkiv. It's very obviously a frontline city. There's not very many people there. There's almost no children. The main people who are still there are very stubborn older people, and some younger people. But there's like no kids under 10. A lot of the buildings are boarded up. If they're not boarded up, the building owners have probably fled. There are probably like most of the vehicles on the road are military vehicles. There's a lot of checkpoints and on those metal spiky tank trap things.
Damn, that's like the Michigan roads.
A little bit. I remember, so I was joking with some friends. I'm like, well, everything's boarded up. There's that many people out. It's not safe to stay out after dark. It's kind of like Detroit. It's kind of
but it's like Highland Park now. Detroit's kind of.
No, Detroit looks much better. Like I was with a friend yesterday. We went to Mexican town. I'm like, this city, it looks. Every time I come back to Detroit, it looks better and better.
And not just because you've been in a war zone, but it actually objectively seems to be improving.
No, I lived in Detroit in the early 2000s. I went to Wayne State University, and I really loved Detroit, but I also love traveling. And so I remember quite vividly like what Detroit looked like in the early 2000s, what it looks like now. It's come a long way. Just in terms of infrastructure improvement, it's more lights and more people out, and it just more buildings fixed up and more new development. It's really exciting to see.
So one of the big pieces of news to come out of Ukraine yesterday was this big prisoner swap, right? The Ukraine got a bunch of female soldiers back from Russia. I assume they're all Ukrainian and not International Legion. But how does that work if, God forbid, you were captured or any member of this International Legion are captured? Do we acknowledge that in the U.S.? We don't want to. The United States government doesn't encourage citizens to go fight, right?
No, they do not.
So if someone got captured, what do? Do they acknowledge it? Do they try to get them back? I mean, how does any of that work? And does that scare you?
I mean, of course it scares me, but the idea of Putin, allowing Putin to run unchecked scares me more. I know there were two American prisoners of war, Andy Druk and the other one, and they were recently part of a prisoner swap as well, and that is sort of a scary thing. That because since I am not, the U.S. isn't sanctioning people joining the Ukrainian army, I am aware that if I'm captured by the Russians, then
you're on your own.
Very much so.
Yikes. There was just a piece in the New York Times, too, about a woman in who was, I think, held by Russian troops, and then the Russian troops abandoned this town, and she said, she was isolated, she was tortured, she was sexually assaulted, and she was like a 52-year-old woman, which I consider to be a young woman. But I mean, it's not like they're out there saying, okay, let's get these prom queens and, turn them into comfort women. I think anybody they get their hands on, you said you learned about the Geneva Convention. It really doesn't sound like these Russian troops have learned much about it or are paying much attention to it.
No, and that's part of the reason why, sort of in the first few weeks I was in Ukraine, I made the decision to stay sort of in HQ and do paperwork instead of trying to go to the front. I respect the hell out of anyone who can go and do that. I've worked with some great soldiers who are currently at the front fighting, but I thought that since I don't have prior military experience, but I'm a little bit better with paperwork and names, and honestly also the threat, the risk of what would happen if I got caught by the Russians was enough sort of convinced, I think I'm better off in HQ.
Yeah, that's pretty terrifying. But you are not the only American there. Now, you were in the neighborhood, but are you seeing people who are coming from America or Americans coming from all over the world to respond to this crisis?
We have Americans from people from I think over 50 nations, and there are some are Americans who lived abroad. Some are Americans who come straight from the U.S. We also Canadians and Brits and a number of other nationalities. So it's really I feel like sort of this call to come and help defend Ukraine has been coming from people who have been responding from all over the world.
Well, what do you see as being the biggest misconception from? So here we see, the war starts. Everybody's engaged in America. Time goes on. Our lives happen. We tend to we'll go on about our lives, but we still follow it in the media. What do you think is the biggest misconception that we're getting fed here about how it's going over there in Ukraine?
That's a really good question.
Thanks.
So not have to answer.
Where's the bell?
Good answer. I think the biggest misconception is that while the U.S. news and the BBC reports on really big events, there's always small things happening. There's always small artillery shellings. There's always things happening, and so it's not just people in Ukraine aren't just affected when there's a really big headline. They're affected every day and every week and every hour, and I feel like sometimes I don't think the news quite reflects that it's not just about big events happening, like Crimea Bridge, exploding, or the drone strikes over the past week. It's become, unfortunately, a way of life.
Yeah,
part of life.
The latest delight is the Iranians are providing drones. So when they're not killing women who aren't wearing a hat, they are sending shitty little remote control ditties to go blow up stuff in Ukraine. I mean, I really like those guys in Iran. They sound like they'd be fun to party with.
Kamikaze drones, I think the BBC called them. And yeah, I've talked to some of the people that I know who are still in Ukraine, and I feel guilty for not being there because this is the first time that, a big strike is happening in Ukraine and I'm not part of it. And so, but yeah, it's scary because the remote control, they can, it's like something out of like a bad war science fiction movie. Like they can fly around, they can blow up, and there's this weird low droning sound that you hear before they come, and it's like, wait, what? And there's been a lot more air raid sirens, a lot longer air raid sirens because of it.
Imagine it's like being in London during the Blitz, where they have buzz bombs, and 1 minute you're out, getting some tea and some bangers and mash or something, which just doesn't sound good to me, but I guess people really like it over there. And then all of a sudden you're running for cover.
And that's what happens.
The resiliency, though, of the Ukrainians is what kind of amazes me. It's just like, we're going to win this. It's going to take time, but we're going to do this. Is that how you see that over there too? Like this is just our way of life right now. We are going to beat this monster and get back to the way it was.
Oh, definitely. Because I think most Ukrainians realize that if they don't soldier through this, if they don't sort of push back, then the alternative is being invaded. And so that any amount of, the one thing I've really noticed that, especially in Kharkiv, is like after there's any kind of strike or any kind of attack, the next morning there'll be older people, especially older women, like with their gardening equipment and brooms, they'll come out and like clean up all the broken glass or the broken or the rubble and start planting flowers wherever like something was blown up.
It's a sense of pride.
And it's sort of like, no, you can bomb it, but it's time for some flowers now.
Are they scared of Putin escalating this to nukes? I mean, that you hear a lot of attention gets on that because when you hear nuclear, it's like, oh, wow. that gets a lot of eyeballs around the world.
I feel like a nuclear threat is almost too abstract to really think about. I mean, and it's something I've noticed that, like, I've noticed people who are not in Ukraine talk about it more than people who are, because it's like, you can't possibly worry about it. There's when you're in a war zone, when you're in combat, there's things you can do to protect yourself and the people you're with. But for a nuclear weapon, it's like, there's nothing you can do. So it's kind of like, most people can't even like think about that. It's like, well, that's like, at least like, okay, so for example, in early September, there was a push around in the Kharkiv region to push the Russian troops back. Unfortunately, that was met with retaliation that the Russians were targeting power stations around Kharkiv. And so I like other people, I got out my power banks, I got some candles, I got some flashlights. And those are things you can do. Like, as for a nuclear attack, it's like,
you're screwed.
Bend over and kiss your ass goodbye.
Yeah, I feel like unless there's actually like concrete steps I can take, like, is there a way I can, supply, get some supplies? Is there a way I can make a plan for this? Is there a way I can help, for a nuclear attack, it's something, it is scary, but it's not something I can really worry about because it's completely out of my control.
And in terms of these power stations, it's winter. I imagine it's colder there right now than it is here, but it's about to be cold all over the Western Hemisphere. How do you think that's going to affect people?
People in Ukraine or people around the world?
Well, around the world, I imagine our energy prices will go up and we'll stomp our feet and get really mad. And India and China will continue to buy cheap gas from the Russians, and we'll blame our leaders for what Putin's doing. But for people in the Ukraine who don't have the luxury of bitching at crazy presidents and prime ministers because they're just trying to get through the day without getting blown to bits.
We're buying warm clothes.
That's it. Bundle up.
Bundle up.
Layers.
Buy warm layers.
And are stores open? I mean, can you go and get the things that people need to get through the day?
Oh, yeah. Actually, one thing that really surprised me, I'm vegetarian, and when I was in Kharkiv, actually, every store I've been in Ukraine, from Lviv to Kyiv to Ternopil to Rivne to Kharkiv, has had a really great selection of vegan milks. And the one I couldn't find it in Poland, maybe I'll have to try here, is sunflower seed milk.
Almond milk is supposed to be very good.
Almond milk is great, but I'm like, buckwheat milk, I've seen buckwheat, and it's very buckwheaty. So in stores, like, you'll sometimes...
I got to stop you for... I know it's completely irrelevant to what's going on in a world crisis, but what does buckwheat taste like?
It tastes exactly like buckwheat.
Yeah.
It's a very...
I'm assuming
grainy,
sawdust.
oaty,
Yeah, strong, earthy flavor. I mean, it's a very good grain. It's a very weird beverage. I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay.
But
I'm passing on the buckwheat. I probably am going to pass on signing up for the military as well, but it sounds like they have so many people rallying to this cause that they're turning people away, which I never, ever would have imagined.
Oh, turning people away from the army?
Right. I mean, now I saw a movie, I think it was with Kirk Douglas, maybe Lonely Are the Brave, whatever it was about the first attack on Israel after it became a nation. And they had Russian immigrants, Soviet immigrants, ironically, coming there to the homeland. And as soon as they would get off the boat or the plane, they were handed a gun and said, "Welcome to your new home. You have to defend it. Otherwise, we're going to lose it again." And so you have people who have their steamer trunks and now they have weapons and they're going out. And I imagine the mortality rate must have been staggering. But, here you have people who are coming there who may not be Ukrainian, who may have, just are outraged by the principle of the thing to fight. And there are so many of them that now they're just saying, we really appreciate your time, pal, but we don't think you got what it takes to fight in this sort of impromptu Ukrainian defense force. I mean, the fact that there's enough interest to turn people away is staggering to me.
I mean, I think that, well, I guess two things. One, it's very hard to start an entirely new branch of the army inside a literal war zone. And that's why especially at the end of March and early April, they began stepping up the criteria, looking again for people with prior military experience, and especially being in combat, because it's scary. Being at the front is no joke. That there's daily artillery shelling, and that's something you just have to live with. That every day at the front in Russia, you're going to get shot at, and
you're going to have to shoot at somebody. You have to be ready and willing to take a life, which to me is a pretty tall proposition, not something to be entered into lightly.
No, but I think one of sort of the appeals with this is I think maybe once or twice a century there is a war that it's very, very clear who the victims are and who the aggressor is. And I think that a lot of people, when they look at Ukraine and they see what Putin has done to that country, they might see a little bit of their own country themselves in Ukraine, where it's like this country, these people they want to be free. They want to go have normal lives and go to school and work without worrying about, do I need to run underground for the bunker because there's an artillery strike happening? And I feel like that sort of really basic appeal, I think that's the reason why a lot of people are coming, is that it's very obvious that Putin's Russia is the aggressor here.
Now, Putin and Russia just are really good at propaganda, and how they lie to their people. They instituted the draft. You see some Russian citizens are like, I'm out of here. I don't want to be drafted. This war is ridiculous. But overwhelmingly, citizens of Russia believe in what Putin is doing. Have you had any discussion with Russians at all, or are you able? Because Kharkiv's pretty close to the border. Are you able to monitor media over there? And what is your takeaway from how Russians view this war?
I mean, the Russians that I know have already left Russia, and so actually, like I mentioned friends who were scared for me to go. One of the friends who was the most scared for me was Russian, because she knew how awful Putin can be. And she's like, you can't go there. You can't go and fight. But I usually try. The idea of like trying to argue with Russian trolls online sounds like the absolute. That's a layer in Dante's hell. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I have occasionally run into separatists in Kharkiv, but again, I speak some Polish, but they speak Russian, and the languages aren't similar enough to really talk. And it's one of those things where I can't. Like nuclear power plants. Like I can't possibly think about this. This is just too.
How many separatists are there? Because that's one of the things you hear. We all saw the phony election, or I don't know, the questionable election about was it Donetsk and a couple other regions joining Russia. How big is that separatist movement? Is it 10% of the population? Is it 2%?
I think that's a very, very hard question to answer, especially now, because I do know that there are some separatists in the the Donbas region. Mm-hmm. Part of the problem is that with the invasion, like some of the soldiers that I know told me that after they would liberate a village, the separatists would say, "Oh, we can stay here. We don't have to go run for shelter. Russia won't attack us." Like, no, you need to take shelter. Russia's going to attack us tonight because we tore down the Russian flag. You need to go in your cellars or your basement. And no, Russia won't attack us.
Really? So
Russia did. And so I think to sort of ask for that kind of number, it's a very hard question. Because A, it's hard to do any kind of serious fact-finding in a war zone. And two, I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be changing their minds.
Just small sample size, you talking to Ukrainians that live there. I mean, you said you've talked to some separatists, but is that like the only one, or you've seen some separatists?
I mean, I've seen some separatists, but it's like most of the people in Kharkiv are not separatists. Mm. Or not openly. I mean, it's easy to tell when they are because they'll react to English very quickly.
What do you make then of people? Well, Elon Musk is going to be the big example. Where he puts out this tweet.
He needs to shut up and send more Starlinks.
Yeah, but he has 244 billion.
Now he
wants
wants to stop sending Starlinks.
No, he said he will continue it, even though it's a massive loss to Starlink. Which
good, just send us more Starlinks. We need it because we need them.
He says he will, but he puts out this post, and there's a little argument. He says he did not talk to Putin. Ian Bremmer, a Politico and the Eurasia Group says that. No, he talked to Putin, and this is the peace plan he made up. What I'm getting at is, what do Ukrainians feel about just, you can keep Crimea, but not Donetsk, not that eastern region. I mean, is that even fathomable?
No. I think it's also when people think about this conflict, I think we like to think it started in this February, and it didn't.
No, 2014, right?
2014. And so this has been a long, long time coming, this very sort of slow advancement. And so I think to a lot of Ukrainians, like giving up any land is unacceptable.
But getting Crimea back, though, is that a priority?
That's a good question I have no idea about. I would imagine yes. that it is part of that.
Well, I think if you get to that point where it's like, no, we're taking the East back, and while we're at it, since we're on the winning side right now, we're taking all of our sovereign nation back. We're taking Crimea back.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not. I don't actually know the ultimate plans of the Ukrainian army, but I would imagine that when there is some kind of ceasefire or truce negotiated, Crimea and the other lands will be part of that. It's like, well, these were ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy, it's going to be tough. Now you speak some Polish, so you're able to communicate with people who speak Ukrainian. Americans who come over there to fight, how do they communicate with people if they don't have some of those same language skills? I mean, are there American units? Are they integrated into Ukrainian, or it's the international force? So I guess you're dealing with sort of a polyglot situation. Polyglot, Sean. Just want to make sure.
Sean just inhaled. He said nothing.
He's dealing with the one glot, but the epiglottis. But you know how? I mean, because I'm thinking about waving at somebody and saying, "Don't go around that corner because there's an enemy there," and somebody's like, "Oh, hey, I'm standing up and waving too." I mean, it seems very dangerous not to be able to communicate.
Well, that's actually an interesting question. It's part of the reason why the International Legion is just foreigners, but all of our commanders are Ukrainian, but they're all Ukrainians who can speak Ukrainian and English.
And of course, I'm sorry, my fellow Americans, most other nations learn more than 2 languages, which ours is English and then Canadian.
There's a lot of Spanish speakers.
There is too, but yeah.
But I think in general, like he mentioned Spanish, and there are some Spanish squads and platoons. They're generally like when it was like French and Spanish.
Hemingway Brigade, perhaps.
Maybe. But no, generally, like language groups are put together.
You know, this show we used to have some people really appreciate that World War I literary humor. Are they all dead now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a long time ago.
When you get to be 100, it's probably your time. But so they deal with multiple languages. But I just wonder, the people who come over, have you gotten a sense as to whether or not some of them are adrenaline junkies, you know, soldiers of fortune, people who, or maybe people got kicked out of a military or did their bit, but they want to get back into it. Like they're always looking for some kind of, you know, action.
Yeah, the adrenaline junkies are ones you can spot a mile off. And that's part of, like, the thing is, if you're an adrenaline junkie, don't come to Ukraine. Because in part, I mean, you know, with the war, it sounds very exciting, but most of the time it's waiting. A lot of digging holes and waiting and moving and some more waiting. And if you're not good with being patient or hurry up and waiting, you're going to have a bad time. And so generally the people, there are various there's some screening processes and interviews, and if someone's not, like, being patient is, I think, one of the first criteria that we need, is that someone who's able to follow orders, be able to wait, because, of course, we all want to go, I want to go do the cool Rambo thing and mow down Russians at the front, but to get to that point, there's a lot of steps and preparation and planning and tactics that have to go into that. And so people who just come because they want a thrill, or maybe they play Call of Duty too much, Ukraine is not for them.
Are you in it for the long haul? Are you going back there? Is this something you're going to see through to the end?
That's a really hard question to answer. Right now, there is a Ukrainian family living in my apartment in Poland, and I've signed a lease with them. And so they are officially taking care of my bills and my cat. And I know I'm definitely going to stay there through this winter. These are the soldiers that I've known since March, that I've been through multiple missile strikes with, and so I definitely want to be here through the winter. But for how much longer after that, I am not sure, because the reality is it's very hard being in a combat zone. Yeah. It's very loud, and there's a certain point when you can keep doing it, but there's a certain point when you stop being effective. And I want to be there, and I want to help Ukraine more than anything, but I also don't want to exhaust myself completely. So,
do you see the conflict going on for years? I mean, what does your gut tell you? Is this something that is going to be a whole nother year? 10 years? I mean, what do you feel?
I think right now I think also a lot of people thoughts and also their hope is that this winter is going to be very decisive, because if Russia hasn't laid up the right kind of supplies and stores and got enough people trained, it's going to be a very harsh winter. And I think I'm sort of seeing that, the ease that areas around Kharkiv have been retaken. I think people are hoping that this winter will be sort of the decisive moment, and I think so as well, because it's Ukrainians are in it to win it. They will stay until the very end. But Russian conscripts who have really cheaply thin-made uniforms and not great MREs, if they have MREs at all, that might be a little more difficult. It's like, yeah, go freeze yourself. No, go freeze and die for this abstract idea that's probably propaganda that you're aware of.
But Putin's not going to stop.
No, but Putin is a man. He is the leader, the tyrant of Russia. But
who can stop him? Who would stop him? Do you see anybody in his inner circle that would get to him?
I don't know. You're asking me these sort of the questions that I think we better ask to someone who analyzes Russian news. I think, like most people, I hope that someone in Putin's inner circle causes Putin to fall down a flight of stairs, choke on poison, and have a boating accident.
Yeah,
but if it hasn't happened yet.
Or the Russian people have to have enough of it. Now that there's conscripting
Sure.
people, pulling them off the street, you do see some of the public opinion starting to turn, but it's, that you mentioned it earlier, Mark, that Russian propaganda machine is so effective and they've been doing it for so long. You wonder how much more time before that starts to be decisive. But
well, it's interesting because they closed down Facebook, whatever it is in Russia. I think
I'm pretty sure they have.
Yeah, and they've shut down other Western ones. And I just wonder, are people going to go, hey, why are these services being shut down? So we're being lied to? I mean, you're right. You just don't know. That's what's frustrating about it.
Yeah. So I don't want to seem frivolous here, but I do know that when you're in a high-stress situation that has no end in sight, and when the stakes are so high, people do need a little pressure release. What do you do for fun in a war zone? I don't think we're sending Bob Hope over there anymore. He got the World War I joke, by the way. But
what don't we do for fun? Let's see. Am I talking about the soldiers, or like on leave, or just in general?
Just folks in Ukraine. I mean, it just seems to me that sense of dread must weigh so heavily. But I also know that human beings are so resilient, and of course, as a journalist, you're familiar with gallows humor. How after a while you see these things that they may shock other people, and it becomes almost a punchline because you either have to somehow normalize it and find a way to basically pull the thorns off it, or it cripples you.
Very dark humor. I know I've talked to a Ukrainian friend, and when we talk, our jokes are pretty dark. Like I realized, like when I went back to Poland, I'm like, I shouldn't tell these jokes to people because they won't get them. Dark humor, but I think also because while Ukraine is is under attack, still there's restaurants open, there's coffee shops open, there are some things, some normal parts of life that are happening. And so I know, like, whenever I go out to a restaurant or something, there are often the restaurants are often full. And it's partly because, like, I remember at the end of August for Ukrainian Independence Day, there was an increased risk of Russian attack, which meant that there were no celebrations this year. And so I feel like there are obviously some disruptions of normal life like that, but I think sort of basic things like getting a coffee or going to the park are things that people still do.
And the president's a comedian, but I imagine this has really disrupted his bits. But I mean, do you still have movies, concerts, performances, poetry,
sports,
slams?
Well, you said there's no kids, right? That's got to be.
Well, that's in Kharkiv. Like when I was back in Kyiv, I noticed that there were younger children. But in Kharkiv, most any families with young children have long since left. I've been mostly on a military base. I'm trying to think if they've had movies open. Probably.
Well, I think this summer, the Ukrainian national soccer team was making a big push for the World Cup, so I'm sure they rallied around that. Didn't work. I don't think they made it, but still, yes, Sean. I saw you pull your mic towards you.
No, there's still live music. Like there's a few places in Kharkiv that I know of live music, have live bands, and it's like, and the place otherwise like, yes, live music with a guitar. This is the best thing I've ever seen.
What do you think? Because I've seen some celebrities go over there, and it's crazy. They have a camera crew with them too, so everybody can see that they went to Ukraine. How do citizens of Ukraine feel about that when they see, I don't know, Angelina Jolie show up? And
that's where all the kids went. She adopted him.
Finally, a good one out of you.
I was waiting for my Hunter Biden joke, but I better stop while I'm ahead.
It raises attention to what's going on, but at the same time, what are you doing there? It seems self-serving.
Yeah, I'm suddenly realizing that aside from Angelina Jolie, I have not heard of any other celebrities coming to Ukraine.
There's been a handful here and there.
Yeah, I think it's like there was that.
No Sean Penn?
He was.
Was he? Okay, I figured on the first flight.
I believe he was working on a documentary too.
Okay.
While he was there.
Really?
But see, he's another guy where it's like half of what he does gets some good results, but it's still an actor.
Then there's El Chapo interviews, so yeah, he's batting 500.
I have a question.
Yes, Sean.
If I may.
You always preface your questions by asking if you can ask a question.
Well, I'm just trying to get permission.
You don't need permission.
We just got to get a drum roll.
Yeah, thank you. What drew you to Poland in the first place?
Oh, good question. My master's, I got my master's degree in TESOL, teaching English as a second language, from Eastern Michigan. And my student teaching, I had three choices for my student teaching. I could stay in Michigan, go to China, or Czech Republic. So I chose Czech. And while I was in Czech, I did some traveling. I came to Poland. I really, really liked it. So after I graduated, I applied for jobs in the U.S. and Poland. Best offer I got was in Poland, and then blinking some time goes by. It wasn't my plan to settle in Poland, but that's just how life turned out.
Where in Poland?
Wrocław.
How big is that area?
600,000 people.
Okay.
Actually, it might be more. There's a large number of Ukrainian people.
Yeah, and Poland has been great in terms of welcoming Ukrainians. Some people from one of the churches I go to have gone, and there's the schools and the churches and the institutions have been very welcoming and accommodating to people, which is great to see. Poland, which doesn't have exactly the most enlightened government, maybe a little more Putin-esque than Zelensky-esque.
Diplomatic.
Yeah,
way of putting it.
Welcoming folks, because we see all over the world, we see governments fall because they've been too accommodating to refugees and immigrants, which is kind of a shame since we are a country of immigrants.
Well, I think that with Polish people, I feel like, Poland's government is fairly right-wing and conservative, the Peace Party. I won't talk about them, but I feel like most of the welcoming started with just people's initiative. That's actually how I wound up with a Ukrainian family living in my flat. And I feel like Poland, it's seen multiple world wars and communism. And so I think like when they see what's happening in Ukraine, they think, we could be next. And also, there's a lot of shared history with Poland and Ukraine, and also the languages is very similar. That if you speak Polish, you can understand Ukrainian fairly easily. And so I feel like, especially like in the first few weeks of the invasion, most Poles were sort of like, we have a spare room. Someone can come and stay here. And so I feel like most Polish people sort of, stepped up and either donated time or their own flats or something like that. And I think then the government sort of had to follow their lead, or they would have looked completely awful.
And it's also right on the border of Belarus, right? Which, is there any fear of them because they're very tight with Russia, with Putin?
I think there's sort of vague fear with Belarus, but
no.
Their army's kind of a joke. Lukashenko's, a 20-year-old, been a dictator for 20 years. There's a lot of I know
great head of hair though. Great head. Great.
I know some Belarusians who have fled from there, and so like Belarus, they're a small, poor, messed up nation. The most they could hope to be is a staging ground for Putin, but it's not like
they have an army. Or weapon. They gotta have some weapons, but nothing.
Sure.
To be scared of.
No, they're smaller than Ukraine and going to be less funded or less, have less finances and less resources. And also, no one in Belarus wants to fight for Putin. I can't even. Even if suddenly everybody in Belarus was mobilized or conscripted, I can't imagine it being much of a threat. It's not a big nation. It's not a rich nation, and Lukashenko does not have, at least as the sense that I get from the Belarusians that I know living in Poland and the Belarusian community, that he doesn't have a lot of support from the Belarusian people because kind of a dictator.
You don't lift the tater off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I had forgotten until I heard it on a news report the other day that the mayor of Kyiv is Vitaly Klitschko, the boxer.
Heck yeah.
I would like to see tough guy Putin try some of those martial arts moves on the mayor of Kyiv. Could we do
6'9" or however big?
Yeah, can we? Or his brother, right? And his brother, another battleship. I would love to see if we could just sort of, stop the fighting and do a little Thunderdome. Putin on his bare-chested horse routine with some kung fu moves, and the Klitschko brothers. I mean, I'd let Putin use the horse. Just go 2-on-2.
All right.
I'm going with the Klitschkos on this one. Shawn, what's the sports department think on that one?
I want to know what it's like to be a vegetarian where you live in Poland.
Sure, you talked about that. Where were you?
No.
Oh,
You were talking about milk.
You don't eat
Poland.
meat.
You were talking about the different kinds of
one of the
milk
big
and so forth. Yeah,
being a vegetarian in Poland or in the army?
or both, maybe.
Actually,
By the way, I want to clear up a term that Evelyn used a minute ago. MREs is meals ready to eat. This is basically vacuum-packed stuff that you probably wouldn't want to eat. But with the vegetarian thing, that made me think about do they have vegetarian MREs?
define vegetarian.
There's not much meat in the real ones either, but...
So to answer your question, in Poland, there's actually a lot of vegan restaurants. And traditional Polish food, while there's often a lot of meat, the meat is often prepared separately. It's not mixed into things. So there's a lot of traditional Polish dishes, especially Polish soups, that are naturally vegetarian. The army's been a bit more difficult because mostly you get fed buckwheat and chicken.
Chicken and waffles.
Yeah, and so, yeah.
Only buckwheat pancakes. Yeah, there you go.
Where's all the buckwheat? Although I guess Ukraine's known for its grain, right?
Buckwheat is it's a popular grain in Eastern Europe.
Have you never had buckwheat before? IHOP has buckwheat
it didn't
pancakes.
leave an impression on me. I think we've talked about buckwheat more in the last hour than I have in my entire life.
Buckwheat pancakes.
But I don't know. I didn't know there's come to Ukraine, stay for the buckwheat. I didn't know this was a.
It's really good. It's
the milk not so good, but otherwise tasty.
Buckwheat. Yeah, I'm actually not sure what. I know buckwheat is pretty popular in both Polish and Ukrainian cuisine, and I've eaten a lot of buckwheat in the past 6 months.
He was great on the Little Rascals.
Oh, Jesus. On that note.
Yeah, thank you.
Shawn, did you have another question? I think I interrupted you earlier.
No. I just
want to talk about food.
I do. I thought it was. I thought
talking
the
about
milk
food.
was interesting, and it reminded me of a story I saw the other day about somebody that asked for an oat milk in Paris, and was told no, which of course is awesome that they were told no. That's
what?
That's
not very welcoming.
That's the French for you, though, right?
They were probably
May
told.
I have some oat milk? No.
They were probably told no.
No. How dare you?
Désolé. Monsieur.
Most military rations don't have our meat are very meaty, but they almost always have peanut butter and oatmeal.
Okay. So I briefly was signed up for some Marine program, and they gave us an MRE, and that was one of the reasons I didn't follow through on the Marine program. And I thought, so I'm going to be eating a lot of this.
Are you a picky eater?
I'm not a good eater.
Really?
If they had peanut butter every day, I'd be okay.
What do you mean by not a good eater?
I am not adventurous.
He doesn't like eggs. I know
Very
that.
particular, and I still am traumatized by a sausage I bit into at a bar in Prague.
Watch your phrasing.
That had some sort of white ball in it. It had more white ball in it than it had actual
spice ball.
meat. No, I think it was just some morsel of cartilage, because I tried to be polite and chew through it, but my teeth kept bouncing off it, and so that stuff like that, I'm just like, I don't think I really want to have that kind of adventure. I'm all for bungee jumping and parachuting and walking down alleys in bad neighborhoods.
But you don't like eggs?
I don't really eat eggs unless they're in something else. And no
Beans
fish.
on toast.
Beans on toast.
One of my go-tos, I would just...
With an egg on top?
Usually not. We didn't have... So in the training camp, what I would usually do is I'd go into town and buy like a case of beans, and we had toast, and so beans on toast is a very quick, easy vegetarian
That answers
meal.
the heating question. It'll be naturally sourced, zero carbon footprint. Sounds good. Anything else you want to tell us and you want people to know about what's going on over there? And by the way, we actually, this podcast does very well in Ukraine. I don't know if it's because you've been listening, but if you're in the Ukraine right now listening to us, we really, our heart goes out to you, and we appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. Hopefully we are one of those few entertainment options available.
I think the one thing I want to leave people with is that I know there's been a lot of talk about how much money the U.S. has been donating and the supplies that the U.S. has been giving to Ukraine. And I want to say, especially like from I think like mid-April on, we could definitely see an improvement in the amount of military supplies we were giving, the amount, the quality, and especially when it comes to things like weapons. So we've been very appreciative of getting that sort of stuff and being able to buy, especially, anti-tank weapons like RPGs or javelins. That kind of stuff has been great. And so I know some of them complain about, the U.S. is spending so much money on Ukraine, but it's like, it'd be great to think, I think that a lot of people think that there's this underdog idea with Ukraine, that, it'd just be great if they could just fight off Russia with pots and pans and buckwheat. And it's like, no, we need weapons. Give us weapons. And I feel like, so the support the U.S. has been giving Ukraine in terms of finances and also supplies has been great. And I feel like if anyone's ever wondering whether tax dollars are going to, it's do things to shoot Russians.
So keep the javelins coming and mix in a little more almond milk.
It can just be all javelins. I'm okay for going almond milk to the end of the war, but send us more javelins.
Okay. So she'll do the buckwheat if she has to. Okay. So before we move on, and thank you for what you're doing. I mean, it's certainly nothing that anybody puts on their where I want to be in 20-year plan. But
no.
But the call came.
Have you surprised yourself by what you're doing?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, this is not something that I ever planned or ever thought. Again, I'm fairly left wing.
Vegetarianism usually isn't.
Vegetarian, LGBT, drag king. Like the idea of going and being part of a military, especially as an American, when the American military, I think, is a very sort of an institution of itself. I never ever thought I'd be part of a military, but it turns out I actually, when we have a common cause to rally around, I get along with soldiers quite well.
Yeah, because none of that political stuff really matters when there's one goal that everybody has to rally around to.
No, I guess that's right. It's easy to throw aside any kind of politics when it's like, we're all here for the same reason. We're all here to make sure that Ukraine is free, that Ukraine is safe, and that Putin gets his ass kicked.
Now, I guess the other person I'd like to see kick Putin's ass would be a drag king. Can you tell us a little bit about that? We don't have to go into as much depth, but we hear a lot about drag queens. Drag queens have become sort of the boogeyman of the 2022 elections here in Michigan, as if the biggest problem we have in Michigan is a guy who dresses up like a woman and is part of a bingo game, or maybe reads books to kids or something like that. But no drag kings. What are we missing out on?
I'm not 100% sure why drag queens are so much more popular than drag queens, but I know with drag kings, it's the same idea as a drag queen, where it's usually a assigned female at birth performer who is going to be performing masculinity in some sort of over the top or campy way. It can be dramatic, it can be fun, it can be silly, but there's this idea of taking masculinity and performing it. So, painting on or gluing on a beard, dressing more masculine clothes, usually, sports bra or binder to deal with the chest area. And for some reason, they're just not as well known as drag queens. I think they're a little less showy. Usually we talk about, traditional male clothing. It's, jeans, T-shirts, or suits, and it's not nearly as outlandish or flamboyant as drag queens often are. But a few years back, there's a fairly a very close-knit LGBT and lefty scene in Poland, and before a drag show, they had this drag king makeup tutorial. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. I don't know how to do drag king makeup. Because I'd always been interested in drag kings, but there's not a huge scene for them in the U.S. And so I went, and we learned how to do, face contouring for men and put, how to paint on a beard. And at that event, I met some Polish women who were sort of very interested in drag kings as well. And we wound up forming our own drag troupe after that. And
did you put on a voice?
No, I actually do the lip syncing.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I don't know nothing about it.
Is there any chance this drag troupe will be deployed to the Ukrainian front?
I'm the only member there right now. I know there is a drag queen, not part of our troupe, but there's a few drag queens still in Ukraine. And my hope when I go back is to reach out to them and say, hey, I would love to do a photo shoot or a performance with you.
I'm just thinking with the USO, if there was like an all drag review, in the Ukraine. I mean, that would be something that would get your mind off the bombing. You know, I mean,
Definitely.
I can just see these small towns. Somebody saying, "What's that? What's going on over there?" It's just like, don't worry about the Iranian drones for a few hours. We're here to do some Motown or some show tunes.
We're here to entertain you with some drag. Yeah, I feel like I have sort of wondered because part of being in militaries are often very, very male dominated and very male focused, and I have sort of wondered. I've had to check in with myself a few times, like, am I here for the right reasons? Am I here to prove something to myself or to other people about my gender or something else? And I know that I'm in Ukraine for the right reasons, but it was something that I was sort of struggling with, like just to make sure that I wasn't joining the army to prove a point to myself or to anyone.
Well, I will say in my journalism classes, we usually, and I don't know if we did this in your class, we usually start off talking about, what do you aspire to in a career? What do you want to do? You want to be a reporter, a writer, a photographer, on TV, print, magazine, whatever. Joining an army and being a drag king, I don't think Evelyn had mentioned that, but I'm pretty sure if she had, I would have remembered because I've heard a lot of different kids talk about a lot of things that they wanted to do, and neither one of those came up.
Life takes us in interesting directions. This wasn't something I planned on doing at all, but it's where life took me, and I'm very happy it has.
I do remember one student asking me if I was a drag king, and I was only mildly offended. I've since changed my haircut and some of my my foundation. I use something that's a little more basic.
Not as much glitter.
Yeah, a little. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the eyelashes are my own. Fellas, anything else?
Is that all you got? No, I just want to see where you're going to go with this.
I sent up a flare, but Evelyn's the only one who saw it because she sees them every night in Kharkiv. But okay, well, Evelyn, thank you very much, and I hope you're going to stick around because I think you're going to help us out with Room 7609. Which, if you're watching us on YouTube, we really appreciate it. If you're watching us on Facebook, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We are about a quarter of the way there. Even if you don't watch us regularly, it costs you nothing to subscribe to the show. It really helps us out a lot. And you can also sign up for a notification or alert so you know when we're going to go live. So please do that. And if you do watch us online on Facebook or on YouTube, we usually drop out of the show for Room 7609 where we play our New Wave music segment. So give us a listen so you can get that part of the show too. And we usually have some exclusive news from Shawn at the end of the show and some of your feedback. So
when he wakes up, it's when he comes to.
He's just building up. It's a crescendo. He's like Old Faithful. He only blows every couple of hours, and when he does, do not put your hand in there because it will be liquefied. So whether you watch us, whether you listen to us, thank you so much. And Evelyn, thanks for everything you're doing. We're going to hear a little bit more from Evelyn in a minute, but first we're going to go to a feature that everybody loves, that we like to call Geek of the Week.
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek? Or we're turning into cool guys?
So just in time for Halloween, and it's not official that this is going to be out before Halloween, but there's a new heartwarming movie about a character you grew up with and love so much.
We should be close now.
We're not going to find them.
We will. Pooh, Piglet, Eeyore, we were friends for many years, and they're out there.
Christopher, we need to leave. Now.
I really need to find out what's happened here,
okay? So you may have recognized some of those names, Pooh, Piglet. Oh, there's Pooh. Yay. I don't remember him in 1,000 Acre Woods like that.
What are you saying? You disapprove of this usage?
Yes. One of the good things about old literature is at a certain point, the rights become public domain.
Sure.
So you can publish the book as many times as you want and not have to pay the creators or their families. Same thing with, certain songs and video. Well, Winnie the Pooh.
Pooh's all grown up and he's a murderer now.
Wait, this isn't satire. This is a real movie.
No, this is
a real horror movie.
Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, which is...
you're making that up.
No,
that's
a real
the title?
This is real. And so rather than pay the licensing fees to the A.A. Milne family, they have waited for this. I mean, I don't know that these filmmakers were thinking in 20 years we're going to realize our dream, but somebody has taken advantage of the fact that they do not have to get the permission of the creator or their successors to make a Winnie the Pooh movie. And so they have made a horror film. And the premise is Christopher Robin grew up, left the 1,000-acre woods, or 100-acre woods, sorry. With inflation, it's 1,000 acres. That's also, not Putin's fault. And decided he was going to, just kind of be a man. And that's wonderful. But he came back, and it turns out that when they were left alone, Pooh and...
Well, I mean, what's scarier, though, than a childhood story now becoming a horror story? I mean, look at what they did to clowns with It and other type of scary stories, right?
So maybe one of the funniest cinematic experiences I've ever had, and I may have mentioned this before, but it was scary as hell at the time, but it was funny. In Poltergeist, when the little boy sticks his head under the bed and the clown comes out and wraps his arm around his neck, my brother got up and ran to the exit and just yelled, "Let's go! We're going!
See,
that's it!"
That's a good
At
horror
the Shores
movie.
Madrid Theater. He was dead run for the park, and I think he was maybe 10. I don't know when he stopped running, but we did see him at the house later, so he must have made it back.
You don't think Pooh's scary enough, Winnie the Pooh?
I love Pooh. I mean, he probably needs to get a shirt that fits, but otherwise, the guy's great.
Yeah. Well, he's always been a little chubby.
Yeah, I mean, everybody in the 100-acre woods was great. Piglet was terrific.
Eeyore's kind of a load.
Yeah, I mean, Eeyore.
I liked Eeyore.
I know, he's kind of a load, though. You gotta admit.
He's a depressing, mopey
load.
Bitch.
Exactly.
But there's something nice, like, oh, someone else is mopey too in childhood literature, not just me.
I appreciate that part.
And the thing I like about Eeyore is you could pretty much get him anything. He's going to appreciate it. Like a popped balloon and say, "Oh, thanks for the balloon." An empty pot of honey. I appreciate the honey pot.
That's right. He was putting the balloon in the honey pot. Like, it was the best birthday present ever.
So think about this. The most bummed out dude in children's literature, you give him cast off shit and he's grateful. I mean, so I have to say that Eeyore may actually be one of the greatest heroes in children's literature because he could take what clearly is a cast-off, sorry, we didn't really think about you that much, situation and turn it into a moment of gratitude. Perhaps he's the most gracious character in children's
What's
literature.
the Geek of the Week?
There's Shawn. The makers of this movie.
Yeah, the makers of this movie.
Really?
Yeah. Is that okay? Are you approve?
No. It's clever. It's fun to turn a trope on its head.
What's the trope being turned on its head?
Winnie the Pooh.
But Winnie the Pooh is
great contribution.
It's a killer.
By the way, Shawn, I got you a pop balloon in the car for Christmas. Do you mind if I give it to you early? I haven't quite finished all the honey, so
Winnie the
it was going to be a combo gift.
You are the Eeyore of the show.
Winnie the Pooh with an axe.
Yeah, no, but they so yeah.
Me again.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
So Evelyn's been through a lot since I met her. First, she had to take my class. There's trauma right there. Then she exposed a predatory professor along with another student from that class. Great work. Got a guy who was abusive to people. Put him on the skids. Took him out of took him out of a situation where he could continue to be a diabolical actor. And
Why don't you just say who it is?
Yeah, can we talk about the person I worked with?
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, the guy is that piece of shit, Jack Lessenberry.
Yeah.
And
oh God, Jack Lessenberry, that name.
And Evelyn worked with Peg Nickel.
Peg McNichol.
McNichol, I'm sorry. Great reporter who's now working at the Oakland Press. So you can see Peg McNichol's work in the Oakland Press. Please subscribe to them as well to support them. And Evelyn and Peg, along with a little help from Ben Duell Frazier and Alan Lengel, the editor of the dearly departed Deadline Detroit, exposed an absolutely diabolical, despicable guy who claimed to be an enlightened enabler.
God, he was such a sleazebag.
Kind of like Winnie the Pooh.
Blood
I have absolutely no response to that.
Yeah,
no one.
We thought Winnie the Pooh was sweet too. But
he was all poo and no Winnie.
He's taking an access to people in hot tubs.
For those that don't remember, what did Lessenberry do?
So Jack Lessenberry was he was the head of the journalism department at Wayne State and also head of the internship program for a number of years. And he was very creepy and untoward to a number of women. He would
and retaliatory as well.
Oh, extremely retaliatory. Basically, he would sort of zero in on sort of young, vulnerable journalism students and sort of try to pressure them into spending time alone with him or going on dates. In promising in return he would get them access to internships or access to editors or other jobs that they might not be able to do. And he also sort of a cult of personality around himself. Because there were a lot of women who were like, "Oh, he's a columnist for the Metro Times. He's this great left-wing thinker. He can't possibly have done all those things you said." I'm like,
yeah, neither did Clinton.
Was it one of those things though? Everybody knew.
Everyone knew. Yeah. I mean, I remember like as soon as right after the story broke, it was sort of like everyone was sort of like, "Oh, we were waiting for this to happen." Like who was going to be the first one? And I feel like Peg was in Western Michigan and I was in Poland when we worked on the story together. And so in some ways we were very protected because she was outside of Metro Detroit. I was literally in a different country. And so I think that having that sort of safety, I think gave us both the courage to be able to do the long, diligent work to get him exposed.
Yeah, they did a great job. And this is one of those situations where the university, to their credit, said they were going to investigate, and to their credit, they actually did. And rather than exonerate Jack, they brought forward some more people, and it turned out that Evelyn and Peg were what really great journalists are, is they dynamite the bridge, but they don't report more than they're absolutely certain of. And so when this investigation was completed, some of the things that they had were still working on were confirmed.
Want to toss in another analogy first?
There were even worse
or
things
metaphor?
There. It was their honey pot was full.
There you go.
Their balloon burst because there
go.
were so many active air molecules in it. It ruptured that envelope. So
if you ate buckwheat, you probably would, get to the point a little quicker.
What has happened to him?
If I ate buckwheat, I'd probably get to the can a little quicker. I imagine there's a lot of fiber in there, right?
So what were the results of the article? Because I know, the news then picked it up off of Deadline and a couple other places, and Wayne State said, "Get out of here."
Yeah, so I know he resigned from the Metro Times and I think from Wayne State as well. And I think the one thing he's doing now is he writes a column for his own website that he posts on Twitter, and for some reason he hasn't figured out Twitter very well yet, and he always double posts every single link. I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah, his Twitter handle is "sit on my lap."
That was a cheap shot, Evelyn.
Twiddler.
If you want to follow him on Twitter.
But it was weird because I had kind of hoped, because part of me had to sort of hope that he would just admit and sort of go move up to northern Michigan and, I don't know, write history books about lighthouses or something.
Sure.
But I did that after sort of seeing the scope of everything that he had done. I was really, really surprised. And it was also sort of disheartening to see someone that so many people had admired really just dig his heels in and say, "No, I never did anything creepy," as the evidence piles up, and it gets worse and worse.
More came out,
and more and more and more.
I gotta say, this is a really weird way to do Room 7609.
Well, and the other thing I was going to say, and she's been a war zone, so we let her pick the song this week. I guess that's what we're getting to. But since we're on Jack,
I have one quick question: was he just lying, or extreme lack of self-awareness?
Oh, he was lying.
Or both?
I mean, no. I mean, after the allegations that came out, I mean, there were enough women who came forward and confirmed things that he had been, tried to pressure them to, go out to dinner or to go out and do other things that. I mean, there's no way he put up. I mean, he's not that stupid. In some ways was very intelligent, but I think he knew exactly what he was doing when it came to manipulating young women.
Yeah, and he was grooming a high school girl. And when I was a professor there, I went to the university. And I think Evelyn may have spoken to the chairman of the department. He was removed from the internship program, but after a little while, people either get busy or they forget, and he creeps back in. But the other thing about Jack is he was a very smart man academically, but they also found out that he'd been abusive to colleagues at newspapers he'd worked at, and that they had rebuffed him. So this was a career-long thing, and it may be why he went from journalism to academia, because he kind of burned some bridges. But he was very smart. I had students who said he was their favorite professor, but he was one of these tough love coach type guys where he would just be brutal with students, and some of them recoiled, as many people would, and others, said, well, he's being so mean to me because he cares about me, or at least that's what he would tell people. But the thing is, he would just be, and I know this anecdotally because I wasn't in his class, but he would just drill people on, you have to check, and no shortcuts and all this other shit. Well, he had written a profile of Kwame Kilpatrick. In fact, he was the first person to put into print the Manoogian Mansion party rumor, because he asked Kilpatrick about it for a profile he wrote for Our Detroit magazine. And Kilpatrick memorably said, the reason why this rumor is so popular is because we're sexy. We're a sexy administration. But Lessenberry took several things Kilpatrick said at face value and then repeated them in his profile, which were nice little anecdotes, but I had years earlier revealed them to be false, such as the reason he wasn't an NFL draft pick is because he hurt his back. Well, his position coach told me in 2001 he never had a back injury. His head coach told me he had the talent, but the reason he never realized that talent, and his head coach had been an NFL player, is because he didn't like the weight room. He wasn't willing to do the work. So not only did Jack just take what this guy told him at face value at a time when most of us knew Kilpatrick was a liar, was already out there in the public, he just reiterated it, which is bad enough. But if he just read some of the major stories about Kilpatrick,
read you, that's what Room 7609 is all about.
or he could have read the work of Darcy McConnell in the
whoever has this problem, whatever that problem is, if they had just read ML, they'd be fine.
I do want to jump in and just answer your question.
But he didn't do that, so he didn't practice what he preached.
Well, it's just this. Some of these guys just have these God complexes, right? Where they don't distinct. They think what they are doing is okay in a very narcissistic, twisted way. Right? It's hard for them.
I got to say this too. They don't know how to read a room.
Well, exactly. That's my point, though.
That's really what it boils down to.
They're so messed up that the reality for them is different.
And Jack, didn't he? I thought one of his.
I'm not saying he's like that. I'm just saying I don't know.
But it's kind of slowly coming. One of the first things he said is that was years ago, which is basically saying,
"Oh, that was years ago."
Yeah, I did it, but that was years ago.
But you wanted to.
That Peg and I just had an extra grind with him. That we were just mad that. Reasons.
Which is the typical bullshit defense that a lot of guys like that put out.
You could read him in his Metro Times column, though. I always thought, God, this guy likes himself. And I'm not talking about like Mike Jokes likes himself.
Well, I'm glad to be in that.
I'm talking about actually somebody that's you could see that in his prose. This long time ago.
Sanctimonious is a word.
The smugness radiated out of his columns. But
exactly.
I guess if we knew this was true, but as Mike said, he'd done this his entire career. Like when he was working at a newspaper in Memphis, he had similar issues with his colleagues where it resulted in Peg did some great reporting and found the letter that the original union rep had written reprimanding Jack and sort of talking about, the issues that reporters had with him. So it wasn't just students. It was decades of this. And I still think if, maybe we're, misinterpreting him or just reading him the wrong way, one of the emails he wrote to a high school student said, "Someday I will kiss you. The jail time will be worth it." I would love to know how someone can interpret that in any other way than that face value.
My only problem with that email is the jail time never came. But if you think about it, and when you look back at his, he was a very high-ranking editor at the Memphis Commercial.
What's the name of the song, by the way, we're getting to?
Well, it's just a tough segue. It's All Night Party, but so thank you for laying that trap. But think about this guy when he was with professional, successful women, and he tried to use his position, and they rebuffed him. He went to a place where all the women would be younger, needed his help, and less secure, less confident, very impressionable. I mean,
he could control them.
Yeah, Jack. You suck, dude.
Well, good work.
Yeah, so that was outstanding work and done from Poland. You want to talk about the original remote employees? This is this is virtual investigative journalism like it's never been done before.
Well, I think I had a really good anchor working with Adam Lengel at, of course, the now defunct Deadline Detroit, and Peg McNichol was great because they were both here, boots on the ground, as they say in the Army, and Peg could, Peg and I could both sort of reach out to students in different ways. Obviously, electronically now with social media, it's very easy to reach out to people from all over the world. She was able to, make do the hard, making phone calls and looking up people and sort of, digging through files here in Michigan. And so I feel like sort of our powers combined, we were able to take them down.
Yeah, no, they did an outstanding job, and it really was truly public service journalism and award-winning journalism. So that was great. And now here's a certain ratio with All Night Party. And if you're going to be at this All Night Party, pour your own drinks, keep your hands to yourself, and just enjoy a certain ratio.
Thank you.
Sean, what was your favorite part?
You wanted me to say something on the air, but no.
This is not an all-night party you would go to?
Oh, that was a great song. What's the next segment? Thank you, Evelyn.
You're welcome.
So Evelyn,
today.
What is it about a certain ratio that you like?
Okay, so I first heard this song years ago when I was still living in Detroit, and it was on like a late night radio show. I want to say it was either WHFR out of Henry Ford Community College or CBC Radio 2, one of their late night programs. Yeah. And it came on, and I just remember it was one of those times where I remember sitting in like the parking lot or the driveway or wherever I was living at that time. It's like, tell me what this is called, because I've always loved goth music, and I love post-punk and new wave and that sort of thing. And I loved the ambience of this song, because it was just this great sort of angst-filled, wonderful sound. I'm like, I just really liked it.
It's got a little Ian Curtis to it. It's got sort of a Bauhaus feel. I mean, it's got that low down, rumbly feeling, but
sort of like Joy Division, but really sort of low key Joy Division, where it's like Joy Division after midnight, after he's been singing too much and his throat's sort of gone.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Smoking a lot.
What's radio like in eastern Ukraine? I mean, are there commercial radio stations that play music?
Oh yeah. And the only reason I know
that part's still normal.
I mean, life is still fairly normal. I mean, like I've taken taxis, and whenever I get in the taxi, there's music playing on the radio. A lot of it is, sort of pro-Ukrainian stuff, like that cover of Bella Ciao in Ukrainian. That's super popular. There's a few other sort of military theme songs that are quite popular. But no, there's still definitely radio.
Is Western music popular?
Oh yeah.
Is there a Tokyo Rose where there's like a Russian broadcast station where it's just like, you are Russia now, please lay down your arms and be our friends. We have lots of latkes for you over at the camp.
Terrible accent.
She's encouraging.
That's so authentic.
No, you need to sort of drop your voice a little. Anyway, my Russian accent is also terrible, but
Come take your shirt off and ride on our stallions with our leader.
Terrible. Let her answer the question.
I think, though, I feel like radio, while it's still a medium that is used, I feel like a lot more of the sort of the propaganda and sort of the Russia trying to pull people over is done online.
Social media.
Social media. And that's the big place where Russian propaganda trolls try to sort of reel people in. Like, I know there's a number of news outlets that are various sort of stages of Russian propaganda, and that those are the ones that try to say, oh, we're trying to liberate you and make life free and better, and you're all Nazis anyway, even though your president is Jewish. We're not going to delve into that too much.
I always think of Eastern Europe as like folk music and heavy metal. I don't know why, but I think of just driving guitars and a lot of leather, or local costumes and accordions.
Driving guitars and a lot of leather.
I do have a lot of leather. I don't drive guitars.
Really?
There are some, like the song that I do in my drag king performance is a Polish punk band called Deserter. And so there's some really good Polish punk and Polish heavy metal.
That sounds cool.
Yeah. It was
Can we listen to some of that, Mark?
No.
They performed in the early 80s, and they were very much against the communist regime. It was really good stuff. I got to see them last fall.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, bring some of that in here. We need to mix it up a little bit in room 769.
Why don't you pick the song next week?
No, we just.
As a matter of fact,
what's the name of the song for your routine?
Mushichevich Kims.
We need to play that.
Yeah, spell it out.
Just like it sounds.
It to you. No, it's not.
There you go.
So my Polish my accent is very bad when I speak Polish. So.
Really? You haven't picked up the Polish accent speaking Polish?
No.
Okay.
No. I can speak Polish. I can be understandable. I've spoken. That's actually how I got over the border. Was I convinced the Ukrainian border guards that I was very serious about wanting to join the army. But when I speak either Polish or Ukrainian, it's very obvious I'm American. Yeah. Very obvious.
Huh.
How hard was it to convince them? I mean, again, I keep thinking they're just like, you want to fight? Come on, grab a gun. We got lots of needs.
Well, I think at first, especially because it was very early in the war, and I don't have military experience, and I'm a woman, they just looked at me and goes, "Yes, that's Karkash. Like, you're a journalist, not a soldier." And I'm like, no, really, I want to be a soldier. So it took, and I think they were also trying to make sure that just complete weirdos weren't going to Ukraine to join. And so I think there were 4 different sets of Ukrainian border guards that interviewed me before they allowed me to enter Ukraine.
And you did not try this dressed as a drag queen. Or king. Drag king.
No. Interestingly, how sort of art and life intersect. I decided when I went to Ukraine, I was only going to take trousers and pants with me, because usually I wear dresses. I thought that would be very not at all functional in a war zone. And so the jeans that I was wearing when I crossed the border were the jeans I had bought to perform drag in. And so while I wasn't dressed as a drag king, and that's where I was sort of like, that's why I really had to sort of check in with myself to make sure I wasn't doing this, prove that I'm really a real man at heart. But I was doing this for the right reasons. But I was wearing part of my drag costume.
Huh. Damn. Well, and these are not sparkly jeans. They're not bedazzled.
They're just regular. Well, again, the song I do is a 30-year-old Polish punk song, so it's just beat up jeans and a t-shirt.
Well, speaking of punk and goth, I just saw on Facebook that the City Club is having a Halloween party on, I think, the 28th. Which would
City Club still exists?
Absolutely.
Oh
Absolutely.
I should go to City Club. It's been years.
They encourage you to wear a costume.
Is it still the same kind of music?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Have they ever mopped the floor? Or are they still sort of sticky?
It's still black, I think. It's been a few years since I've been there. But
what's your costume going to be, Mike?
I'm thinking about wearing, although I hate people who recycle costumes, but I think I'm going to recycle my Devo costume.
I'm going to go as Sylvester Stallone in Rhinestone.
Sylvester Stallone.
I like how you asked ML the question so you could just say what you were going at.
Yeah, I had
Good
you.
move.
I had you.
No, I didn't think of that until just now.
I had you pegged for Big Wallace Shawn from The Princess Bride.
Oh,
but that's inconceivable.
I'm more of a Carrie
Eeyore.
That's inconceivable.
I think Eeyore would be a great costume.
For Shawn, yeah, it'd be
Andre
great.
the Giant.
Yeah.
Oh, talk about how you
That'd be
meet
me.
people too. It's
want
like,
a peanut?
has anybody seen my tail? Would you like to attach my tail?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, it's subtle. It's subtle, but it's
Sounds like a Jack Lessenberry move. Good job.
Yeah. No.
Evelyn, you want to start writing about ML?
Hey, I'm going as Devo. Am I not, man?
I'm going as Marie Curie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm going to
make that costume.
Like post-radiation sickness?
Carry a bunch of beakers.
Like with
and-
patchy
Well,
hair?
so I got sort of
Test tubes.
a vintage-looking black dress and some test tubes, and I'm going to get like those green neon, like you crack them and they become neon.
Sure. Yeah, glow
sticks. Thank you. I was trying to remember the word for those. And I also have contact lenses that are little radiation symbols.
Oh, fun.
Damn.
So,
That's nice.
Yeah, part of
It's not Devo, but it's nice.
Thank you. I wanted to take leave in the U.S. on Halloween because it's been like 8 or 9 years since I've celebrated Halloween in a country that celebrates it.
Sure. Well, so are you going to the City Club, or is there another party that you just haven't invited us to?
Actually, no. I'm going to be in New Mexico with some close friends.
Okay.
So
I thought we were pals. It's close friends, and then there's us. That's
okay, Jack.
All right.
Hurtful. I think she's just afraid I'm going to bring Shawn as my date. He's going to come as a drag king. I'd like to see that.
Would you?
I think that would be amazing.
You'd like to see me dress up like a man? Yeah.
Well, you see what's the movie?
Rhinestone.
No, where all the Australian guys are going around in the desert.
Men at work.
Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Yeah, the drag queens going around the outback in a bus. I mean, and one of them is Guy Pearce, who is awesome.
He is awesome.
And I think also Hugo Weaving, Mr. Smith from The Matrix.
Guy Pearce. What's the great L.A. Confidential?
L.A. Confidential and Memento.
That reminds me. It's the time of the show where Mark tells us what he's watching and recommendations.
played-
And you mentioned a British show you're watching.
He played the Dick King in The King's Speech. He played Edward VIII.
He also played. Did you mention Memento? Did I not hear?
Yes,
that?
he mentioned it. Okay. Fantastic movie.
It is really
Love that movie. No, the only thing I'm watching
What are you
right now
watching?
is Game of Thrones. And
She will help you.
Game of Thrones.
House of
Trust
Dragons.
him.
House of Dragons. What about you?
Me? I'm still working through Shetland. And I'm oh, by the way, since I'm going to go ahead and watch Better Call Saul, what network is the current season on? Because I can't get it on
It's
Netflix.
over. It's done.
No, I know, but isn't it? Who was the streaming service that
Netflix.
So why won't they let me
Netflix?
watch the 6th season on Netflix?
Because it's user error. Maybe they haven't made it available yet. Maybe you need a VPN.
Here's a show for Mike. It's called Sherwood. It's a British show. Six episodes. You'll get right through it.
Okay.
No, the other shows
about a coal miner strike in the 80s.
I didn't
and
think it was
Thatcher,
about unwanted erections.
Margaret Thatcher and all the shit that she did. Anyway, go ahead.
I still love Atlanta. I still love The Patient, Steve Carell, both on Hulu. But I really love, and I didn't think I would like this show as much as I do, and I know, ML, you've watched a little bit of it, which is Welcome to Wrexham, the soccer documentary about Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney buying a soccer club in a very small town in Wales and kind of getting the town to rally around it and building it up, because there's a lot of Detroit parallels there and how it had just been depressed, and we rally around our teams, and that team is just at a lower level, and there's less Hollywood celebrity in it than you would think.
Well, they're
Despite
very
the fact
much
that it's Ryan Reynolds. Yeah.
They're very much like the Lions, where they've been in free fall for years, but they have an amazing building.
I think you're going to say
an epic stadium.
I think you're going to say great fan base too. By the way, *Halt and Catch Fire* finished that. That was.
I think they do have a good fan base.
Really good.
Good show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
The Sandman series.
What?
On Netflix. The Sandman.
Come
on.
I've not seen that yet, and I want to start The Watcher too.
Very, very good. I recommend it. I watched in Ukraine.
Any other recommendations?
No, I've only really had time for that one.
I figured you had time for none, but yeah.
She's in a war.
I know.
But think about that. How good is this series? If you're in a war, you're
like she said, there's
I
a
got
lot
time
of
for
downtime.
Sandmen.
There's a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with the downtime is when you have the downtime, okay, is your phone charged up?
Yeah.
And is the Wi-Fi working? Yeah. Sometimes not so much. And so
is it all Starlink, by the way? Like you made reference to it earlier.
I know we've had some Starlinks.
Yeah.
And so that's really good. But by the time I got my own laptop was when Russia was targeting power stations, and so I have time. The power's out, and so is the Wi-Fi. Shoot.
Yeah, that's been the big story the last couple of days. Is that they're down to 30% power stations in Ukraine. That's according to Zelensky.
Putin is such a dick.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how they do it.
So,
what's
fun note?
To
finish on.
So,
are we reading emails? What are we doing?
No, we want to thank Bryant for his continued support of the show. We encourage everybody to donate. You can do so at mlsolvedetroit.com. There's a little donate button up there. You hit the button, and just if you've missed an episode, I just want to update people because I feel like I have to redeem myself here. We've tried to add Venmo as an option, and Venmo will not let us do it yet because I already have a business account. You can only have one business account at a time with Venmo, so they say they're working on it, but if you do have a PayPal account, you can make a donation to support this show, which brings us many fine guests like Evelyn Aschenbrenner, who is doing so much to keep the world safe because, the thing is, once Putin gets what he wants there, he's only going to want more. So let's keep the wee man where he belongs, which is also what we should have told Jack Lessenberry 30 years ago.
I was waiting for it.
But
what are you trying to get to anyway? What's the pivot here?
Well, I think after after 175 episodes, I thought you might know that
Mark is ready for Cyrus.
We have our main event. We do our Geek of the Week. We have room 7609. Then we thank the people who support the show, and we encourage you to support our donors. That's David Hall Financial, and of course,
we talk
Luke
about Putin.
Nowacki. You can find links to their websites at our website, which is mlsolvedetroit.com. We appreciate if you let them know how you found out about them so that they continue to support us so we can continue to take time that you wish you had back later. And then we get to your feedback with usually a very delightful little music bed put together by Mr. Max Prokop of the King's English, of Shasta Fox, and of the Smiths Unite, who will have a big show Thanksgiving at the Magic Bag, as they do every year. And without further ado, as that guy who said no to the person who wanted whatever kind of milk it was.
Oat milk.
Oat milk, yes. Let's get to our feedback. Shawn is going to start us off.
And I'm going to go ahead and cop what the French did. No.
What? Why? What's going on?
Oh, I don't know. What do you want?
I think no may be the answer to, did you do your homework? No, monsieur, by the way. But
what am I reading? Am I starting, Mark?
God. Yes, go ahead, please.
Oh, my God. This is from Richard Rose.
Do you have ADHD?
What'd you say?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Who writes, college TV broadcasts previously showed the sideline placards used by teams to signal defenses, coverages, etc. Now these placards aren't shown. Why not?
I was wondering the same thing because I remember seeing them all over the place, and I think the Spartans were late to the game, but we had them, and I have not seen them this season at all.
Real quickly.
Wait, you said you haven't seen them. You haven't seen them on television?
No, I haven't seen them in East Lansing, and I don't think I saw them at Husky Stadium, where you may have caught my national TV debut.
I felt like there was an implication there that TV is purposely not showing them as to give away.
That's what I'm not clear. Yeah, I don't know if it's. I assume Richard's talking about the television experience and not seeing them.
Yeah.
I think overall there are fewer. In fact, I know there are fewer because Clemson a few years ago was stealing, sort of deciphering these signs and figuring out what they meant, and people started getting paranoid, as they often do. Football breeds more paranoia than any other sport anyway.
They still exist. I was watching Penn State use them.
Yeah, they do. They're just not quite as popular now because people are worried that whatever they're holding up is going to be deciphered. No, unlike what the Astros did, right? Trying to figure out pitchers, and sign stealing there. So partly sign stealing, partly it was a fad because of the spread offenses and trying to rush and do everything and go quick. Technology is also helping a little bit because players can hear coaches speak now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they do.
There's a little bit. You can't talk, but they're experimenting with that. So yeah.
Did they limit that in the NFL? Like one guy and you have a dot on you. Is it the same in college?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it is in college because it's not.
But they don't all have
more restricted than the NFL. No, they do not.
Okay. Well, Shawn, thank you. I was not sure what to expect from that answer, but that.
So he doesn't need to do homework. He just shows up and
that's why he's here. He's a font of wisdom.
No, I did a little homework because I'd forgotten about Clemson. They were the ones that started figuring out these placards and so forth, and that sent a lot of paranoia through the sport.
But that's funny because you see baseball players go out there and they put their mitt over their mouth when they're talking on the mound. You see coaches put their play card up over their face when they're talking to somebody. But then you put up a card that's as big as a car hood
with a can of cheese
with all the pictures.
And then you got to figure out. Well, the idea was that they'd change the symbols every week too, right? So you couldn't get caught. But some very sneaky, not sneaky, but very clever people at Clemson started figuring it out.
Yeah, but I guess it would make sense if you have a dessert in one corner and they run every time. If you see a donut, then the next week you see a Snickers bar, it must be a run, right? I mean, they can't. It would be hard to remember the plays and then say, okay, this week forget banana, it's persimmon.
And what would the play be if you saw an Elric?
Over the top, baby.
Especially with Elric.
Straight over the top for the win.
Red conical, or not conical, but red.
Thorn to Reed, Reed to Coleman, touchdown for MSU.
You're feeling good. Your boys finally won.
I was going to say. I can't wait till next week till you start declaring victory over Michigan.
Well, by the way, so next week I'm thinking
wouldn't that be something if they beat Michigan?
I just added 30 minutes.
If they beat Michigan again, wouldn't that be something?
No, fuck off, Shawn.
I don't
want to think about that.
I'm standing by my prediction that Michigan State will go undefeated this season. I'm not changing anything. So I think next week we may try and have Dan Leach in to talk about the game. You guys know the Squatch?
I know Dan.
Yeah.
He's crazy as hell. But the guy I'd love to have on. And
let's have Dan on. That's fine.
Every once in a while, he reaches out to me on social media. Is the guy flipping me off in the background from the Trouble with the Snap game?
I like that guy. That guy's great.
Yeah, he will send something that says, why don't you have me on the show? Because I'm in that picture. And I'm like, yes, we have to do that. But I never think, can you give me your number? So
Sorry,
if you're listening, we'd love to have you on. Reach out to me. Send a note to ML soulofdetroit@gmail.com, where we get a lot of feedback from you. That's mlsoulofdetroit@gmail.com. Or you could give us a call at 3. I can't even.
Where you give a lot of feedback.
The phone that shall never ring.
Did you hear what he just said? No, seriously. No, did you hear?
Unfortunately,
did you hear what he just said? Where we get a lot of feedback from me.
No, I didn't say for me.
Okay, Jack.
I thought I said
the way
from you.
we get a lot of feedback from me.
What's your confidence level right now for Michigan State?
God, I don't know. I was encouraged to see some of the guys who came back, and I was listening to Drew and Mike yesterday talking about how strong Michigan is with the run, and there's no question they got an absolute bull.
State's changed their front too.
Corum and Edwards is a nice change of pace. I think that's the way the sports guys call it.
No, they're both fast, so you wouldn't really say change of pace, but that's all. That's okay.
That's all I got.
Don't be an elitist sports writer.
So not.
So what is your confidence level?
Shawn is the buckwheat milk of my cereal. I'm
the fiber. I'm the one that.
Are we at 5?
You make me want to go right now. Yeah. You want to go right now? You want to go?
Oh my God! I have to listen to that every day.
But Wisconsin was a running team.
You watch? No, you don't have a watch.
And they had a battering ram, and they limited the damage there. But I think McCarthy.
Well, they actually made some changes on defense, right?
Because they had personnel.
Formation. Yeah.
So that Van Sumeren didn't play as much at linebacker. As much as I like his story, Windman's much better at linebacker, but they didn't have enough guys in the line to put him in the middle there. But and I also think they moved him up because they thought Snow was going to be there. But I think that getting guys back helps, and I think anybody who watched that game saw how much of a coach on the field Xavier Henderson is. I mean, that is a guy,
absolutely
senior leadership, smart guy, gutty guy, in on the plays, tremendous. But
so
but
what's
I
your
think
confidence level?
J.J. McCarthy is much better than Mertz, and I think the receivers in Ann Arbor are probably better than the Wisconsin receivers.
By a good bit.
But
and so is the offensive line, which you wouldn't normally say in the years past, but it's true this year.
Well, they get that Remington kid from Virginia. I'm like,
so
stay in Virginia.
He's so good.
Oh, he is.
But we know how much Michigan people like Remington, so we wanted to make sure that.
Oh my God!
Remington awards. Do you guys love awards? Just like your Heisman Trophy winner.
I feel abused over here.
K9. Oh, wait a minute. No, K9. He was our guy who should have won the Heisman, who's tearing it up in the pros where sweet-ass Hutchinson ain't doing nothing now. But that's okay. That's all right. That's what I heard from people who watch the Lions because I don't. I'm going to go.
So you make the statement anyway. Okay,
yeah, I'm going to go.
So this is all based on what I read. What do you have to read? What do you have to read?
What do I have to read? What?
Yeah. Are you going to. Who you picking? Michigan State winning? Yes or no?
Spartans 3-2.
Okay, there you go. Okay. What are you reading?
In a shootout.
What am I reading? Like
never a good sign when I got to be the one to move this along.
It was this is
Michigan is truly the favorite.
Jesus.
We don't have a kicker. Michigan is the favorite.
We got deadlines. You got another podcast coming in here.
Do you want me to read this email? Boss?
I don't think it's up to me now.
Sean, do you remember? Because
you got to go to the Alpha now.
This is a topic. I'm getting exhausted on this topic, but
the sleeper has awakened and taken over.
Exhausted by a lot of things, but I'm getting exhausted by this topic. But I'm kind of interested in it still. It's so Caroline writes in: is this really a stretch? What if Coach Mel Tucker is trying to get fired to collect $85 million left on his contract? Look at the Panthers getting rid of Matt Rule, paying $40 million to let him go. His wife is a lawyer. I mean, it's more conspiracy around Mel Tucker's contract. I don't think
there'd be a buyout, right? There's some buyout clause of some kind.
I don't think coaches try to get fired. They're too prideful.
Evelyn's on her phone now. That tells you how interesting this segment is that we're doing.
It tells us she's mocking you at the beginning of the show.
I was on my phone earlier too. Mark is on his computer on and off and his phone. It's okay. I'm just saying, I'm pointing out.
I'm a Wayne State alumna, and so when it comes to football, I picked the university that has the worst football in Michigan, so I can't talk about American football.
So the difference is when Evelyn's on the phone, she's checking on the safety of her friends, her comrades, and a nation. You're watching Baby Shark videos.
No, I was actually...
and thinking, I wonder if Carlos would be mean to Baby Shark.
No, my editor texted, and then I also... my editor texted from the job that actually pays me, and I was fixing a typo in the column.
Well, we were going to pay if you worked here.
You know what I mean?
This is like a shelter. Yeah. This is just where you get warm and take a leak on your way from Ann Arbor to downtown.
True. No, not
it's like a rest stop.
I come here because I love to see you guys,
Okay, great.
You sold that well. Okay, Frank wants to know, will we find out the true scope of Coach Tucker's contract on October 25th?
More Mel Tucker.
The week of MSU at U of M. Or does that FOIA case get punted? No pun intended, but of course it was intended. Until after the election.
Oh, my God.
I say election because if the full scope reveals Trustee lied and purposely spread misinformation about who is on the hook for that $95 million, there could be political implications. Yes. You're a Spartan fanatic, but also advocate for responsible, transparent government. Will you be upset or not care if it's revealed that we were lied to and actually the broke public university is on the hook for $60 to $70 million of that $95 million? Should heads roll? I think it's clear they knew this would get out eventually. They just thought he'd be setting the world on fire so no one would care. But now this may get out as the coach is staring down a John L. Smith era 4-win season for Nick Saban and Kirby Smart money. P.S. Brett Bielema has a historic dumpster fire. Illinois surging at number 18 in the nation for only $4 million a year. But maybe Tucker's cigar selfies are worth an additional $90 million. So a black man puts a cigar in his mouth and he can't be rich? Come on.
Wait, that's what the emailer said?
No, I just got kind of carried.
We don't need to talk about it. That was good.
People who don't like Tucker continually obsess about the cigar selfies. It's crazy. I mean, the man, he likes a cigar. Lots of guys
Well,
like
when you're
cigars.
winning, everything looks great. When you're losing, that stuff looks stupid. I mean,
Well, the other thing is, isn't that the big thing? Celebrate a victory with a cigar. Light the cigar. It's time to light them.
What do you think, Evelyn?
Smoke them if you got them.
About cigars?
Yeah.
I have no opinion.
Yeah.
Sorry. I've occasionally had cigars, but I usually give them to people. I'm not
Part of your routine?
No, I'm an ex-smoker. I started smoking in the military because everybody does, but I'm trying to quit. And so they have cigars, they're very stinky.
So
can I go back to that emailer though? He asked a question. Do you really think, because there's a deadline of October 25th for the Free Press to see this contract or Michigan State to turn the contract over, however that works?
Is there an October 25th deadline?
According to that emailer, I thought he said that.
Well, no, I mean, the way the law works is you have 5 days to respond to a Freedom of Information request, up to 5 days to respond. You can just give it over right away, which is what I advocate. But you can take up to 5 days to let the person who requested the information know whether you're going to give it, deny it, or take another 2-week extension because they're 5 business days.
Mm-hmm.
It's been more than 3 weeks since the Free Press requested this information from Michigan State. Hell, it's been more than 3 weeks since I wrote a column saying give this shit up, because what would happen if you didn't? People would be left to their own devices and conjecture and gin up conspiracies. Sure. No, I don't think they're holding this until after the election. First of all, because I don't think they are. But second of all, these guys aren't smart enough to do that. This board of trustees is a friggin' disaster. They're humiliating this university after the last board of trustees put us in a terrible situation. You know, if anything, we need the greatest football program in the world right now to distract from the disaster in the administration building. So, no, I think they would welcome a distraction. I think they would welcome something else for people to direct their ire to. So, no, I don't think so. But I am an advocate for responsible, transparent government. And I say again to any Michigan State trustee listening, any administrator, anybody in the general counsel's office, release this contract. It's a public record. It should be out there. If Matt Ishbia and other rich guy are truly providing $95 million to pay the head coach of the Michigan State University, you should have nothing to hide. Perhaps you're just stupid and you have nothing to hide.
What's the next
But the longer you hide it, the more people are going to think you have something to hide, which in and of itself is damaging.
Are you reading, or is that somebody else, or is that you?
That's him. What is the next step in the lawsuit?
I think it's for us to sue. I don't know if there's any negotiations.
I thought they already did.
Oh, come on, Mark.
Well, the thing is, it's a civil suit. So what ends up happening is it takes 3 or 4 years to resolve.
There you go.
So they can hold on to that contract, not let anybody see it for that long.
Trying to end this show.
I don't think they can hold on to the contract until it's expired. I mean, I don't think they can run out the clock for 9 years. Huh. But listen, anybody who is condemning Coach Tucker, anybody who thinks that we've seen what he can do yet is fooling themselves. He's inherited a program. It takes a while to transition. He's learning not only about the talent he inherited and what the players he's brought to campus can do, he's learning what his coaching staff can do.
He'll be fine.
So this university's football team is going to look different than this in the future. Is it going to look better? I think so. Is it going to look worse? Possibly. But if you're judging Mel Tucker right now based on what you've seen and what you know, you're being hasty, you're being rash.
I think hasty's
And
enough.
I want to know what's really going on here. Why are people so fired up about Mel Tucker? Now, we weren't doing this podcast early on in the Harbaugh regime when he was struggling, so I can't draw that comparison. But Mark was doing the Drew and Mike show and has been doing it for 97 years since Marconi first put him on the riff. But what the hell?
That's when we started today's podcast.
Did we hear a lot about this same sort of stuff? Because remember, when Harbaugh had a contract, his contract was almost more of an outlier than the Tucker contract.
How so?
Well, I mean, he was one of the top 3 highest paid coaches in all of football and hadn't achieved anything.
But the difference is hiring a coach away from the San Francisco 49ers versus giving an extension from a guy that had just left Colorado.
Wasn't he unemployed at the time?
Huh?
Did Harbaugh come straight
probably
from
was going to be.
Yeah,
I mean,
they'd already
they were
said
all too happy to get rid of him.
He said beat it, and he didn't know how to find the Vikings yet.
Well, I just think there was greater leverage on Harbaugh's end than there was on Mel Tucker's.
Yeah. No, those are all good emails, and it was nice that we read them.
But typical Sparty having to compare it to something else.
Yeah, there we go.
In
Good
Ann Arbor.
point.
No. This is not an Ann Arbor thing.
Are you okay? Do you
This
need
is
some water?
this is another coach who was given a long-term,
You need some water?
high-dollar contract that our listeners
Okay, well, let me
and
ask you
our
this.
viewers would be watching. I mean, if you're watching Mel Tucker, you're probably equally familiar with Jim Harbaugh. Now, I could have compared him to Dabo, but I don't think Dabo got paid this early on.
He did not, no. But I will say this, the return and where Michigan's program was, I've said this before, after 3 years of Rich Rod, 4 years of Brady Hoke, he has gotten season tickets up. He's gotten more interest into the program. You know, there's a lot of 10-win seasons. I think they got a pretty good return on the investment, especially now after restructuring his contract. The question is, will Michigan State see that kind of return with Mel Tucker?
Sure.
Is he worth the money they're paying him?
The Harbaugh
This year, no. Last year, yeah.
The Harbaugh investment was
Is this some
more
kind of
a-
news segment I'm not aware about that I didn't get the memo on?
Well, one of the things that prolonged it is the minor bird who keeps chirping from his perch over there.
Yeah, chirping like, where
Tweets.
Oh my God, do you ever stop talking?
You know what I would
Pretty
like?
much.
I would like to see that bird alight on the Bo Schembechler statue, and
Oh my God, that really bothers you, doesn't it?
it does. It does. There's no difference between what happened at Penn State and what happened at U of M, except Michigan fans refuse to acknowledge exactly how horrible it is what happened there, and they're allowing the statue, that enabler, to be there and allowing his name to be on that building.
I think
which
there's a
is-
difference, but we don't
is
have another
incredibly
5 hours
offensive.
to discuss it.
No, we don't.
Yeah, the difference is the guy who was allowed to get away with crimes was abusing adults as opposed to children. Still bad. And that's not to say Larry
I'm with
Nasser was
Mike
anything
on
other
this.
than a devil. He
I'm
definitely
with
was.
Mike on this one.
And that university screwed it up. And if there was
I
a
wrote
they
a column
did.
about that.
if there
That
was
is the
a
difference.
if there was an athletic director or a coach statue who was aware of all that, I would be out there tearing it down myself. In the same way that they brought down that statue of the guy who I'm talking to, I
Now
can
you
remember
sound like
his
you're
name,
reading again.
from
Are you
Iraq.
talking
What
about-
was his name? What was his name in
Who?
Iraq?
What?
The
Saddam
bad guy.
Hussein?
Saddam. Like they brought down that statue of Saddam Hussein. I would be there with my rope around it, pulling it down like they brought. Thank you, Evelyn.
The difference is clearly the
Come
age.
back and we can send Shawn to a war zone.
Oh, God, you just encouraged him.
Shawn?
I will go. Yeah, that's fine. If I don't have to come back here again, although
Anyway,
I would miss Mark.
We appreciate your correspondence. And Brett Bielema had nowhere else to go. The fact he's getting $4 million is a miracle because
We're
the guy
going back to that.
destroyed his career. And
So
Frank,
how
we
good are
appreciate
you
your
with an
we
AK?
appreciate your
That's the
input.
question.
I can learn. I mean, I learned to put up with Mike so I could learn.
We appreciate your query, and I hope we addressed all the issues you raised, Frank and Caroline. I was going to ask what's on the Shawn and Carlos podcast, but I guess we're out of time.
We are.
So we should probably let Shawn save all that great content for that cure for insomnia.
Why are you slowing down?
Sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
just sort of
Finish strong. Come on. You can do it.
catch my breath and give Shawn an opportunity to actually jump in there and tell us what is going to be on the Shawn and Carlos podcast.
Michigan football. Mark will be happy about that.
I will, yeah. Who's any guest?
No.
Okay.
No.
You want me
Not
to
this
come
week.
out again?
Yeah, that'd be great.
A little
Can,
busy.
can I? When you guys talk
I'll be
about
doing
Michigan,
this.
when you guys talk about Michigan football, could you ask whether they actually travel during the season? I know they've gone to see the Pope and they went to Paris and some other place. Do they ever go on the road when the football season's happening? Do they ever do that? Does that ever happen?
What are you talking about?
The Michigan football team.
Like, because they had 3 home games this year and out of conference?
What do they? When have they been on the road yet?
Yeah, twice.
Where'd they go?
Did you feel this way about Ohio
Indianapolis
State?
and Iowa. Oh, look.
those
What's
don't count.
Mark? Please. What's next?
Do they go to states that don't begin with an I?
I gotta get upstairs. What's next?
Me too. I'm with you. We'll just leave him here talking to the clouds.
Okay.
No, Shawn tinkles in his pants, and then we encourage you to listen to the other Red Shovel Network's shows. That would be the Drew and Mike podcast and Charlie LaDuff No BS News Hour. And then next week we may be joined by the Squatch. We'll see. but I think you can expect a spirited engagement on Michigan State, and perhaps some other news that we'll be opining about that comes up between now and then, because if you know anything about this show, you know Shawn has to pee, and we always try and be topical.
And you love conjunctions.
I have to pee too.
It's unanimous.
Just do it. You can do it. I know you could do it.
I get stage fright. With all this talk about peeing. Can you dig it? And people watching.
Can you dig it? From the time-worn pages of the past, we have recalled
the soul of Detroit, Mark Fellhauer.
Toll the bell.